Hey everybody, it's Nathaniel Avila reporting from Dallas County, and I'm here with Ruby of the Giant Glasses reporting from also Dallas County. How are you and your giant glasses doing?
I'm here doing well in the land of giant glasses,
Okay.
reporting live from Dallas, Texas, aka land of the giant
Giant
glasses.
glasses. Alright, so today is actually, it's going to be our final episode on Mexicans in America. What do you think about that?
I think that it's going to be a very informative episode. I mean, like most of our other episodes have been very informative, like as far as the past goes. But like, I think we're gonna have a lot of events discussed during this episode that a lot of people relate to. So just
Mm-hmm.
hold on to your horse. I don't know. What would you say? Hold on to hold on to your butt.
Okay. All
It's gonna
right.
be a bumpy one.
Yep. You ready for to get started on the 2010s? Because
Yeah, so we're gonna start off on the 2010s.
we're gonna go into the Obama era. Ready for that? Oh,
We're gonna
what?
go
But
into the Obama era and what it did for Mexican Americans.
yes. Oh, what better times? Am I right, Ruby?
Um, I don't know.
You don't know?
To
Okay.
be honest with you, like I don't ever see a better time.
Okay.
There's some good silver linings, and then there's some bad things,
Okay.
as always. So you gotta take the good with the bad, huh?
Uh huh. So Mexican Americans made significant electoral strides during the Obama era. Now, in 2010, the Republican Brian Sandoval was elected governor of Nevada, and he was the first Latino ever to do so. That same year, the Republican Susana Martinez became the first woman and Latina to be elected as governor of New Mexico and was the first Republican Latina governor in U.S. history.
Republican, eh?
Yeah. So, also in 2010, Joseph Garcia was elected the first Latino lieutenant governor of Colorado in the state's history.
Was
So,
he also a Republican, or
I have
how
no
did he
idea.
run?
I have no idea. It doesn't say his political party. Oh no, he was a Democrat.
Colorado.
Mm-hmm. So during the 2012 United States presidential election, President Obama ran against former governor of Massachusetts Mitt Romney. During the campaign, Romney sparked outrage amongst many Mexican and Mexican American officials when he suggested the economic disparities between the United States and Mexico were the result of the hand of Providence. So, what does that mean?
The hand of Providence.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I was hoping
The
you knew.
disparities between. Let me see. What does that mean? By the hand of Providence. Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Graced by a fast-paced narrative and based on the extensive research. Let's see. It's a faith-based revolution. That so it seems like it's a term that was used, you know, way back when in America.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's actually like a book on it. It's something that has to do with the gospel. It's Christian. It's a Christian reference.
So Latinos voted overwhelmingly for President Obama's reelection in 2012 when he earned as much as 71% of the community's vote. Now, I believe you didn't vote in 2012.
I don't remember, to be honest.
Uh huh.
I think I did. I do remember voting for Obama though. Yeah. I do
Oh, okay.
remember voting for him. Yeah.
I wasn't old enough to vote in
Oh,
2012.
sorry.
Better be sorry. So, in response to their overwhelming defeat, Rice Priebus, the chair of the Republican National Committee, ordered an autopsy report to assess deficiencies and paths toward the party, paths forward for the party. The report called for a greater inclusion of Mexican Americans, Latinos, and other minority groups, stating if Hispanic Americans hear that the GOP doesn't want them in the United States, they won't pay attention to our next sentence. It doesn't matter what we say about education, jobs, or the economy. If Hispanics think we do not want them here, they will close their ears to our policies. What do you think? What do you think?
I mean, that's kind of, yeah, that makes sense.
But the report, however, was largely ignored by the GOP in the years ahead, so kind of defeats the purpose.
Like Mexicans, we don't care about the Mexican Americans.
So what do you think about that? The fact that the fact that Priebus made this thing where like we probably should be more attention to Mexican Americans, Latino Americans, and the rest of the GOP goes like, no way, throw that in the trash.
Yeah, I mean that was the cause and effect of why Obama got voted in.
This was after Obama got elected.
Oh, this was after.
Mhm.
Okay. So they were trying to enact policies, though.
Yeah.
Right. And did those policies get enacted?
Well, obviously not, because they just ignored everything.
Right. And so that just goes to show like how they really didn't want to pay attention to that community.
How does that
They
make
really
you?
didn't care.
How does that make you feel, Ruby?
It's crazy because that community is a very large population of the U.S.
Mhm.
So for them to not want to listen to all populations that are considered their constituents, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing in Congress? If you're only going to pay attention to certain communities like that, it's not your job.
Mhm. So in the 2010s, nativism in the United States increased, particularly in the border states like Arizona. In 2010, the Arizona State Legislature proposed and passed the Support Our Law Enforcement and Safe Neighborhoods Act. Critics of the bill argued that it was fundamentally racist law designed to legalize racial profiling.
Oh man, why? What had happened after that?
So in Arizona versus United States, the Supreme Court overturned 3 provisions of the bill, including requiring legal immigrants to carry registration documents at all times, allowing state police to arrest any individual for suspicion of being undocumented, and making it a crime for undocumented people to search for or hold jobs in the state.
Yeah, I remember that time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember all that happening in Arizona. And people were very, very outraged.
Yeah. And what did you do about it?
I think I shared information. I signed petitions. I did what I could. I mean, I'm not in Arizona, so it's pretty much, I did as much as I could.
So despite its...
I know that it got, taken care of. Like, they stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm. No, because the Supreme Court overturned those things.
Right, because they saw that it was not fair, you know.
So despite its overturning, the bill had a negative social effects on Mexican and Mexican American communities, particularly for children and youth. So in the same year, Arizona passed SB 1070. It also passed Arizona House Bill 2281, effectively barring Mexican American studies from being taught in the state's public schools. So how does that make you feel?
Makes me feel like this is the reason why we have this podcast.
Okay.
Because they don't want the whole history of everyone being told, so...
Why, though?
It's important. Because I think it goes back to, the nativism, like you said. They
Mm-hmm.
want everyone to see America without fault, without its mistakes, without its wrongdoing to certain communities. And if you're not telling it all, I mean, then why are you covering up? Like, what's the reason that you're trying to cover this up?
Mm-hmm. Sounds like the same thing with the critical race theory. Why don't they like critical race theory again?
Same reason I just said. They want
Okay.
to cover up all their misgivings, and they want everyone to just think that America is without mistakes and
Okay.
they're just great. America is great always.
Okay. You wouldn't agree?
Oh no, I
How
don't agree.
dare you?
I don't even think there should be any country, that says we're the greatest. Because
Oh.
it's like it's all about being, it's all about having humility. That's a great character, trait to have is humility. And we should be able to see you know, where we fall in many places. Other countries are not. Like, for instance, universal health care, education. Like, we should be able to see what things we can grow in and be better at.
Mm-hmm. We're the only
And
first
same
world
with all
country
the
that
other
doesn't do that.
countries. What?
We're the only first world country that doesn't do the universal healthcare thing.
Right. So, and that's a reason why we don't have that, is because there's been, it's been the thing of the nativism that they want people to, have in their minds, that we're great and we don't need anything, or we don't lack anything, and we don't need to change anything,
Mm-hmm.
so that people cannot challenge what does need to be changed.
Okay. So on June 15th, 2012, President Barack Obama announced an executive branch memorandum known as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, known as DACA.
DACA.
Mm-hmm. So this change to immigration policy allowed eligible undocumented individuals brought to the country as children to receive a renewable 2-year period of deferred action from deportation and become eligible for a work permit in the U.S. without providing a path to citizenship for recipients, though. So the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services began accepting applications for the program in August 15th, 2012. And in less than 1 year, over 500,000 people applied to the DACA program. So the next year, in 2013, a bipartisan group of 8 United States senators, known as the Gang of Eight, wrote its first draft in the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act of 2013. So the bill would have provided a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented Americans. And it passed the Senate with a strong majority of 68 to 32, with 14 Republicans joining all Democrats. However, the United States House of Representatives, under Speaker John Boehner, did not act on the bill, and it expired at the end of the 113th Congress.
Oh man.
So, how does that make you feel, Ruby Sama?
All because he didn't want to. Oh my god. Well, I guess I can't speak for him, but seems like that wasn't important to him. If
Probably
he didn't
not.
act on it.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you
And so
say?
that
Yeah.
ruined, like, the opportunities and probably the lives of several of those people
So,
who were waiting on that.
what do you think about Obama trying to put in these policies in?
I think he was doing right. I mean, like I said, the Latino community is super big, the population.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had been shit on basically for so long. and he was finally giving them their rights that they deserved. I feel like so that was a good thing. Now I do have some information about the things that are going on in Mexico in the year 2010
Yeah, if you
that could
must.
probably provide some insight as to why people would not want to go back to Mexico, would prefer not to be in Mexico
If
at
you
this
must.
time. If I must, well, yeah, because it's the whole 360.
Okay.
So we gotta know what's happening in Mexico.
Okay. Let's
So
hear it.
in 2010, the cartel wars is what is going on in Mexico. They have, the cartel wars in Mexico have produced unprecedented levels of violence throughout the country. No longer concentrated in just a few states, the violence has spread all across the northern tier of border states and along much of both the east and west coast of Mexico. In 2010, drug-related homicides surpassed 11,000, an increase of more than 4,400 deaths from 2009 and more than double the death toll in 2008. So the high levels of violence were caused not only by long-term fights between the Sinaloa Federation and the Vicente Carrillo Fuentes organization, also known as the Juarez Cartel, but also the outbreak of new conflicts among various players in the cartel landscape, such as Los Zetas, the Gulf Cartel, and La Familia Michoacana. It also didn't help that some political leaders, as well as some military generals, were involved in assisting or backing the cartels. All that corruption, of course, that comes with greed. Um, if you want more information on that, the Netflix show Narcos Mexico goes into some more detailed information. The successes that the Calderon administration had scored against some major cartel figures such as La Barbie and El Nacho in 2010 had helped foster some public confidence in the war against the cartels, but disruptions to the balance of power among the cartels just have added on to the violence. So it's like the president, the Calderon administration, that's who the president is at that time, they have tried everything. They've exhausted, the military, the ones that aren't corrupt, and they've exhausted the actual police, the federal police, in trying to take down all these cartels. But it's like they just keep springing up, and then they keep fighting amongst themselves for territory and survival. And this also causes, the deaths of people who aren't involved in the cartels, because these guys literally have shootouts in public, in broad daylight, and anybody can be, killed because of, how do I say, they're caught in the crossfire. So that is a very, very dangerous time in Mexico, all over Mexico. So that kind of lets you know why people wouldn't want to go back there, if possible.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
It's very interesting stuff, Ruby. Very interesting.
Very scary stuff.
Would you survive there, Ruby?
Heck no.
Really, you don't think so?
I would want to get the heck out of there.
Sorry,
Yeah, because
Ruby.
I'm saying you don't know when these people are just gonna have a shootout randomly. You're at the wrong place at the wrong time. You could end up dead. And there's so much suspicion, and among the cartels, if they even suspect that you're working for some other cartel, or you're giving information to people who are trying to bring down the cartels, they won't hesitate. They'll kill you. They'll kill you. They'll kill your family. It's a bloodbath over there.
So, yeah, during his time in office, President Obama was known in the Mexican American community as the deporter in chief. Do you want to know why?
I would, because that kind of contradicts what you just said earlier.
So, in between 2009 and 2015, his administration received more than 2.5 million people from the country. Yeah, he removed more than 2.5 million people. Uh, though some analysis claimed these numbers were misleading due to the way they were calculated. So, that might not be the case.
But he still did deport several people. Under what basis? I mean, because I guess these were not the people that were under the DACA, right? Under the DACA protection.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said that expired, right?
Yeah. No, the border security thing,
border security
act expired, but the DACA thing is still around.
Okay. So then I'm trying to figure out how or what happened with these deportations.
Yeah. So during his time in office, the Department of Homeland Security initiated 2 policies which represented a major shift in prior administrations. First, DHS began placing undocumented border crossers through formal removal proceedings. Second, it made non-citizens with criminal records the agency's top deportation target. Thus, when faced with criticism for his administration's record-high deportation numbers, Obama responded by saying, the statistics are actually a little deceptive. We've been apprehending folks at all the borders and sending them back. That's counted as a deportation, even though they may have only been held a day or 2 days. So what do you think about that? So that's what happened with the
so he
deportation.
Was having people return from the border.
Right.
But under what basis? Just cause? Or were they criminal? Did they have criminal background?
I have no idea.
Because I do know that whenever we had ICE
we still have ICE. ICE is still around.
So that's under the Obama administration. He actually was the one to say, just go after immigrants that have criminal background.
Mm-hmm.
Because before they were just going after, ICE was just going after anybody and everybody that was here illegally. And so under Obama's administration, he said, just go after the ones that are here with criminal background and deport them.
Mm-hmm.
But then there goes to, again, ask the question of what kind of criminal background. Was it anything and everything, like parking tickets or, something that's a non-violent crime? We still have issues with, even today, with people who are citizens here, like we're criminally punished for being poor, basically, because we can't pay ticket fines and stuff like that.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'd like to know more about that.
Well, you can learn more about this in a CNN article called Obama's Deportation Record Inside the Numbers by Alan Silverleib. And there's
he was trying to make it seem like he was like attempting to assist, immigrants, but then at the same time, based off of what you just said, that's kind of contradicting that.
Yeah. You can also read the Los Angeles Times article by Brian Bennett called "High Deportation Figures Are Misleading." So, nevertheless, Obama faced significant criticism for his failure to pass immigration reform and for the detrimental effects of deportation on families' lives. So let's move on to within the country. So one of the most serious issues facing urban Mexican Americans in the 2010s was residential displacement through gentrification.
That is still happening today.
Mm-hmm. In San Francisco's historic Latino neighborhood, the Mission District, the rapid expansion of Silicon Valley created a housing shortage, which incentivized investors to buy properties in historically low-income neighborhoods, like the Mission District. So in order to renovate them and sell them at higher rates to tech workers. As a result, many of the neighborhood's taquerias, bakeries, bars, and auto mechanic shops were replaced with luxury condominiums, organic ice cream stores, international art galleries, and upscale cafes.
That's the same thing that happened in Oak Cliff, and Bishop Arts District moved in, and now there's a bunch of condos everywhere.
I don't know. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the
You
Oak
didn't-
Cliff thing.
Well, you weren't one of the people who were living in Oak Cliff in that neighborhood
I lived
that got displaced.
I lived in Oak Cliff for 4 years.
I'm saying, were you there whenever they made some people move and got displaced?
Probably not, but
Okay.
I did like the fact that I could stand places and not be afraid of a drive-by shooting.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, that's what I was seriously told. One time I was standing outside of my high school, and one of the teachers told me to come in because he didn't want there to be a drive-by shooting.
Just an FYI, crime can happen anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm just recounting
It
an event
It
that
doesn't
happened.
matter how many luxury condos and nice restaurants you put over an area, you're still like a block over from, bad neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods, I should say.
And I'm just recounting an event that happened when I was in high school.
I mean, I lived in Oak Cliff growing up. My whole, up until I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had any issues.
Mm-hmm.
I never got shot at or stabbed like all these other people want to say.
I got stabbed.
It was a nice neighborhood to me because I had a bunch of my family,
Ruby.
all over there.
Ruby, I got stabbed.
No, you didn't.
In the heart.
Yeah, whenever they gentrified the whole neighborhood.
Yes.
I mean, it's nice. That's the thing. People want to go over there now because, it's a nice, place to hang out and let's drink our high-priced coffees and shop at our high-priced luxury stores and screw all the people who got displaced from their homes.
But hey, there is a place in Bishop Arts called Lockheed. Great barbecue. It is owned by a Mexican American. It's a Mexican American owned. Go there. It's really good.
Yeah, if you want to support Mexican Americans, then yeah, you can do that. But as far as everyone else who got displaced, I mean, literally, my whole family lived in that area, and they all were forced to move.
Mm-hmm. Were they at least compensated?
Yeah, but not enough. You're literally gonna make me give up my home that I've been living in for years and years and years. Generations of my family have been here, and you're making me leave, and you're not giving me enough to go to, even a better neighborhood or anything like that. I literally have to just go a block over and find whatever I can with the money that you're giving me for my property.
Mm-hmm.
That it should be worth more than what you're giving me because you're basically, trying to build whatever you want here. So you're the one that's in need, not me, and you should be giving me what I need and what I want.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what's happening.
So, a significant resistance to the mission's gentrification emerged, including the restorative economics of La Cocina Community Kitchen. The resistance art projects of the Clarion Alley Mural Project, the San Francisco Tech Bus protest, and the radically inclusive social services provided by the Dolores Street Community Services Shelter. So, in Los Angeles, gentrification affected the traditionally Mexican-American neighborhoods of Echo Park, Highland Park, and large swaths of East LA. Oh yeah. Particularly the neighborhood of Boyle Heights. As white college-educated young people increasingly moved to Los Angeles in the 2010s, they wanted to live in hip, urban, edgy, and importantly, affordable neighborhoods. So their presence increasingly pushed rent up and made the neighborhoods unaffordable to longtime residents.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't capitalism great, Ruby? I said, isn't our capitalism great, Ruby?
And I said, ha ha.
Now, in Boyle Heights, this process was sped up by the arrival of a subway station called Mariachi Plaza Station, which made the neighborhood even more desirable to young white gentrifiers wanting easy access to the rest of Los Angeles. In 2016, significant controversy rose when the message, it says fudge white art. What?
Do you have a picture?
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. Was spray painted on the entrance to the Nicodem Gallery in Boyle Heights, especially when the LAPD classified the graffiti as hate crime. So
Hate crime. What about all the hate crimes that have been perpetrated against the Latino community all these years?
Oh snap! So let me show you a picture of
They spray
something.
paint something and they're like, oh, that's a hate crime.
Okay, here's an image of one of the spray paints.
It says white coffee.
Yep.
That's all I see.
Yeah, that's what it says.
So I guess they already painted over the other part.
Mm-hmm.
Where it had the F.
I think the officer is standing in front of it.
Oh, okay. All I see is white coffee, and then some guy is painting over the rest of the message because it looks like there's something after coffee. You see that?
Yeah, and it is at a cafe.
Gentrification protest 2017.
Yeah, that's the thing. What do you think about that? I mean, what did these business owners ever do to us, Ruby?
What do you mean? You just explained what they did to them. They forced the prices to go up and, the property values to go up, and people couldn't afford their homes anymore.
Okay. But do you think it's justified to attack just these business owners?
They're not attacking.
Oh, sorry.
How is this attacking?
Protest.
Yeah, I mean, whenever there's something wrong that's happening and, it's happening to a lot of people from a certain community, I mean, the effect is going to be what? They're going to rebel.
You're rebel scum. Blah, 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 blah.
The rebel scum were always the ones in the right, weren't they?
You're part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor to the Galactic Empire. So, modern commentators compared gentrification to the urban renewal projects of the 20th century and connected urban displacement with American capitalism, racism, and colonization.
All bad words.
How dare you. So gentrification affected many major urban Mexican-American populations in the country, including in cities like San Diego, Albuquerque, and Chicago. In the historically Mexican-American neighborhood of Populace in Chicago, working-class families experienced high levels of displacement due to rising rents and property taxes. Populace, which had grown as Mexican-American enclave in the 1960s and 1970s, when expansions to the University of Illinois at Chicago's campus forced them into the neighborhood, became a tourist attraction in the 2010s, where sanitized versions of the Latino-ness were marketed to developers and new potential residents. So the result was the opening of new businesses catered primarily to upscale non-resident visitors and recent arrivals. Populace's primary tool to resist gentrification was a grassroots effort to designate the neighborhood a historic landmark.
That's a good way to go about it, but did that work?
I have no idea.
And are you saying that they were using the premise of Latino culture to attract upscale non-residents of that area?
Yes.
Oh my god. Even worse. They're using the people that they drove out, they're using their culture to make them more money.
How does that make you feel, Ruby, in your David Bowie shirt?
It makes me feel like, again, the rebels are on point.
Okay.
And they have all the rights.
LGBTQ plus rights made significant strides in the 2010s. Would you agree?
Maybe.
Okay. So between 2010 and 2019, public support for marriage equality rose by over 19 points. And 2011 marked the first time in U.S. history that more people supported same-sex marriage than opposed it. So in 2011, Obama formally ended the policy of don't ask, don't tell, allowing openly identified gay men and lesbians to serve in the U.S. military. In 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Obergefell versus Hodges that same-sex marriage was constitutionally protected under the 14th Amendment. Around the time of the Supreme Court's ruling, Latino support for marriage equality was amongst the highest of any ethnic group. So now,
Alright.
now same-sex marriage is legalized in the United States.
At that time.
And what do you mean at that time? It's still legal now.
Oh, but in some states.
No, not in some states. All states.
All states?
All states.
I thought I heard differently.
No, yeah, no.
Last administration.
No, it is all states. It is completely legalized in the entirety of America. That's why this was such a big deal.
Okay, because I thought I had heard after this, within the last administration, they had retracted that, or I guess they were trying to.
They were trying to probably, but yeah, it's still legalized in all 50 states in America.
Okay.
So, despite these significant strides, however, the Mexican American Latino LGBT communities continue to struggle with many challenges. In the aftermath of the Great Recession, an approximately 4.2 million youth experienced homelessness in the United States, of which 700,000 were unaccompanied minors. Of these 4.2 million, estimates range that between 11 and 40% were LGBTQ, many of whom were Mexican American or Latino. So what do you feel about that?
All right.
You feel all right about
that?
Good
strides there.
Huh?
I said we're making some good strides there, and people are actually, they're not afraid, to come out, and they feel better about.
Yeah, but explain
being openly themselves.
Yeah, but explain how you think that's good. The fact that 40% of homeless children were LGBTQ and Latino.
Oh, the homeless world? No. I mean, that's kind of sad.
Okay.
But, I guess that goes back to, there's still going to be those people that have that boxed-in mentality, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, our whole country is, putting in laws that support the LGBTQ community, you're still going to have those people that have those old mindsets that don't grow.
So let's talk about transgender equality. Which also remained a major issue for many Mexican Americans. In the 2010s, Black and Latino transgender women experienced homicide rates wildly disproportionate to their percentage of the overall population. The failure of the Obama administration or mainstream LGBT organizations to address any of the annual conference conference to. No, I read it wrong. The failure of the Obama administration or mainstream LGBT organizations to address any of these difficulties created outrage against the LGBT Mexican American and Latinx communities. So there's blame to share. In 2015, the activist Bobby Salcedo disrupted the opening session of the National LGBTQ Task Force's annual conference to protest the white LGBT community's continued ignorance regarding the violence against transgender women of color. So in the 2010s, LGBT Mexican and Latino ICE detainees also experienced an alarmingly high rates of sexual abuse in the U.S. immigration detention centers. The undocumented activist Janicet Gutierrez interrupted a speech by President Obama during a White House LGBT celebration dinner in 2015 to protest violent detention center conditions for LGBT Latinos.
And everybody too. I mean, like, there's been so many whistleblowers that have came out saying that the conditions of the detention centers are very, very bad, and then even more so whenever during this last administration the parents and the children were separated, and there were reports of the children being sexually molested. Yeah, I hate talking about that because it just makes me so angry.
Are you angry now, Ruby?
I've been angry.
No, don't hurt me. That's my secret, Agent Romanoff. I'm always angry.
It's something that annoys me to my core, and it always will until they do something about it.
Okay, well, you need to get into a good mindset because we're going to start talking about the Trump administration, okay?
Yeah.
I know we don't want to talk about it, but we kind of have to.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about the Trump administration?
I'm not sure how I could get in a good mindset for that, but, I mean, we got to talk about it, so...
Are you ready to talk about the Trump administration?
Let's do it.
Okay. So from the start of Donald Trump's campaign for president, he faced accusations of racism and discrimination against Mexicans and Mexican Americans. So in his announcement speech in August 2015, Trump said that the United States has become a dumping ground for unwanted people from other countries and received pushback, in particular for his statement, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
I wasn't aware that Mexico was sending people.
So the comment was interpreted by many to imply that immigrants from Mexico had been sent to the U.S., and that many could be generalized as criminals and rapists.
Yeah, let's not talk about the criminals and rapists that we have here in the country that are not immigrants and U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm. So in June 2016, Trump was again accused of racism when he said that he would be unable to receive a fair hearing from the Mexican-American judge, Gonzalo Curiel, because the judge, this is what he said, the judge, who happens to be, we believe, Mexican, has an absolute conflict. I'm building a wall. It's an inherent conflict of interest. Now, the border wall is one of the central themes of Trump's 2016 campaign, which many of his rallies featuring the chant, "Build that wall."
Build the wall, build the wall.
So numerous commentators noted the racial and nativist connotations underlying the campaign pledge to build a wall. Studies conducted during the 2016 presidential election showed negative online discourse surrounding Latinos was so severe that it negatively impacted the community's mental well-being. Nevertheless, Trump won at least 18% of the Latino vote in 2016.
Which makes no freaking sense, you guys. Literally bashing you, and then you still vote for this guy. Like, how does that make sense? I have no idea. But you know what? That just goes to show you how that whole nationalism thing is like deeply inbred into some people.
They're deeply inbred.
Embedded. I could say inbred because they teach it to their, children and their children and their children, but
and
that
they
whole like
and they give it,
great,
they stuff it in bread.
Crap. Like that is something that is in their head, and they want it so bad, they want to believe it so bad that they would vote for someone that's talking bad about them.
Mm-hmm. So while in office, the Trump administration unleashed a series of controversial policies affecting Latinos. On May 7th, 2018, Jeff Sessions, then Trump's Attorney General, announced a new zero-tolerance policy at the U.S.-Mexico border, meaning any person apprehended crossing the border without documentation would be charged criminally, and any children occupying them would be held separately. And thus, the detention centers were born.
I don't understand what was that strategy? Like, why did they have to separate the kids? They had never done that before.
I guess only to be mean. So, though the policy was ended by executive order within a month, more than 500 children remain separated from their parents more than 2 years later. I see you kind of like swaying back and forth. What do you think?
Yeah, that was a shitty fucking job, because even after they stopped that, they did a poor job at making sure that the kids were reunited with their parents. Some got lost. Like, literally, they were just like, oh, we don't know what happened to them. We just released them into, back to Mexico. We don't know if their parents were there to get them. We don't know if fucking sex traffickers got them. We don't know if cartels got them. We don't know if they ended up dead. Like, how can you just sit there with that in your conscience and be okay with that? Like, that just makes you a horrible, horrible person.
So during the 2018 midterm elections, Trump politicized the Central American refugee crisis, claiming terrorists and gang members were secretly hiding alongside women and children in order to gain entry into the United States. So after the midterm elections, the Trump administration adopted the Remain in Mexico program, which essentially sought to shut down asylum entry into the country. The policy resulted in a humanitarian crisis, as tens of thousands of refugees were forced to live in makeshift tent encampments in Mexico while they awaited an asylum hearing. So what's your feeling of
they were no longer staying true to the U.S.'s policy as far as asylum seekers. They were like, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
Right.
And so people that really needed help and were seeking help and had children who needed help, babies even, that were fleeing, a horrible, horrible condition. Because, like, you don't just walk, like, hours and hours and hours with your children for no fucking reason. Like, just 'cause.
Okay.
There are very, very horrible conditions that they were fleeing. And us being the U.S., who are supposed to be the diplomatic, democratic, the nice, country, or the better country, or the great country, even, like they say, we're supposed to be the ones that help. And provide humanitarian aid. And they weren't. So it's like, I'm speechless.
So Trump's efforts on the border resulted in the erection of over 53 miles of new border wall and the renovation of over 400 miles of existing border walls. So this wall construction sparked outrage for its impact on indigenous communities. So during the Trump years, Immigration and Customs Enforcement also collaborated with other U.S. law enforcement agencies such as the U.S. Marshals to conduct large crime raids. during which hundreds of people were arrested and deported if found to be undocumented. In fact, in 2019, ICE conducted the largest single state immigration raid in U.S. history.
And that goes back to what I was talking about. They weren't just going after people who had criminal backgrounds. They were just going after all of them.
Mm-hmm. So the 2010s saw levels of mass protests unseen in the United States since the civil rights movement of the 1960s. So in 2017, A Day Without Immigrants protested President Donald Trump's plans to build a border wall and to potentially deport millions of undocumented immigrants. In 2018, protests against Trump's family separation policy occurred in over 700 cities and towns in the United States, many under the title "Families Belong Together." Also, in response to the Trump's family separation policies, widespread calls emerged to shut down U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. And I know you're pretty big on that, aren't you, Ruby?
On what? As far as what?
To shut down the U.S. immigration and customs enforcement.
ICE?
Yeah.
Well, they do more harm than they do to better anything.
Mm-hmm.
They do more harm than anything, especially to the communities.
Don't you have like a shirt that says like abolish ICE?
Mhm.
It doesn't say abolish ICE, Ruby.
Then why did you say that?
It says F ICE.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna say like no, it says F ICE. I thought that's what you were gonna say. So in 2016, as the Trump administration sought to the end of the DACA program, the United States Supreme Court agreed to hear their case. So DHS versus the University of California created a significant controversy, and major protests in support of Dreamers occurred across the country. Remember that, Ruby? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember that. Mhm.
So major American corporations also voiced their support for the DACA program. So the Supreme Court ultimately upheld the program. So Mexican Americans were also involved with many major social movements during the Trump presidency, including the movement for Black Lives Matter and racial justice. The Women's March, which is the Chicana activist Carmen Perez was one of the 4 national co-chairs of the 2017 march, and gun control movements such as March for Our Lives. Remember those, Ruby? You were in some of the Black Lives Matter marches, right?
I think I was, because this was like largely when the pandemic was still going on. Like this happened like right as soon as the pandemic was happening. So yeah, I went to like 1 or 2, and thankfully, the ones that I went to weren't disrupted by police officers, who were intervening in our rights as Americans to protest.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have that right via, go look at the Constitution, and we have a right to protest. That is our American right to protest. And I'm a member of Texas Organizing Project, and I was supposed to go to a protest with them that was held at the Margaret Huntnell Bridge over here in Dallas. And thankfully I didn't go because several of them ended up being unrightly, or how do I say, unjustly arrested. They were all arrested. They were all maced. They had a really, really, really horrible time, and they weren't doing anything except for exercising their right to protest.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up having to, have, how do I say, go against the court system and everything like that was trying them, after their arrest and things like that,
Right.
Don't know for sure the outcome of that, but I'm pretty sure they're still to this day fighting those charges. Yeah.
So, according to some scholars, the intense activist energy during the Trump presidency motivated young Mexican Americans to adopt a political identity of neo-Chicanismo, defined by ethnic people, cultural heritage, and expression, and protecting immigrants' rights. So, this younger activist generation was actively adopted gender neutral language such as the terms Chicanx and Zicanx as a way to push back against gender bias in politics, society, and activism. So let me show you a picture.
Sounds like the young ones are being more adults than the adults are.
So here's a picture. All right. So what are we looking at here?
So it looks like this is a drawing that a little boy did. He looks maybe to be about 9, 10 years old. It says boy holding up a sign at a Families Belong Together march in Phoenix, Arizona. So it's a little boy holding up a white poster board looking thing with a drawing that he made. At the top it says vote, and then he said, look what Trump did, and he shows kids behind what looks like cages, a jail cell.
So how does that make you feel, Ruby?
How does the drawing make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
Or the picture? The picture overall makes me feel like it's crazy that this little boy has more compassion and empathy than the person in the current administration.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know one thing. He's a Five Nights at Freddy's fan.
Is that? Oh yeah, he has a hat of Five Nights at Freddy's. But yeah, it just goes to show you how it impacted even the little ones.
Mm-hmm. So over the course of the 2010s, the rise of white nationalist domestic terrorism increased dramatically. So there was a large surge in white supremacist and other hate group membership over the course of the Obama administration, and the United States saw a record number of hate crimes committed during the Trump administration. Are you surprised, Ruby?
Nope. And I wonder if you have any pictures, but I'm sure people could go and look them up. When Obama was actually enacted as president, there were several people who were saying very racist things, even then. So yeah, racism has never died in this country.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a thing that, some people have thrived off of even in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go back to our other episodes, that's one thing that has always been apparent in this country, is that everything started with racism.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just goes to show you that it was not a dead issue, like a lot of people wanted to make it seem like. A lot of people would say, oh, that's not even a thing anymore, and you guys just want to make everything about race and this and this and that, and it's like, it's very much alive, and you could tell that as soon as Obama was enacted as president.
Mm-hmm. So, in 2019, one of the largest mass shootings against Latino Americans occurred at a Walmart in El Paso, when a 21-year-old white terrorist opened fire, killing 23 people and killing 23 others. So the terrorist was mostly radicalized online a trend which occurred with increasing frequency in the United States. So, national security expert has compared the radicalization of white and other far-right terrorists to the online recruitment of terror organizations like ISIS. So, shortly after the attack, the terrorist posted his manifesto on the online message board 8chan, where he wrote about the Latino invasion of Texas and detailed a plan to separate America by race, claiming white people are being replaced by foreigners. The terrorist faces 90 federal charges, including 23 counts of federal hate crimes resulting in death, and he will face the death penalty if found guilty. What do you think about that?
So they still haven't found him guilty?
No, the trial's still ongoing.
Wow, and that was how long ago?
That was 2 years ago. So what's your opinion on this whole thing?
I don't have an opinion. It's more like a matter-of-fact type of thing. This dude killed all these people, said why he killed all these people. Several people saw him killing all these people, but yet he still hasn't been found guilty.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and then also...
That is America for you.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about how bad the people are that come from Mexico.
If you want to learn more...
Mexicans killing people and shooting up Walmarts? I don't know.
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about the 2019 El Paso shooting, you can check out my true crime podcast episode about it. We go into detail, much more detail on it there. You can find it right up there. Are you going to watch it, Ruby? Or listen to it?
Yeah, I'll listen to it.
Okay.
Even though it's going to piss me off, I'm sure. Even more so now that I know that this guy still hasn't been found guilty.
So in 2020, we're done with the 2010s. Now we're into the 2020s, Ruby. So the former House Representative and Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julian Castro, became the first serious Mexican-American candidate for president since Ben Fernandez ran in the 1980 Republican primaries. Castro dropped out of the race on January 6, 2020, after polling far behind other candidates. And he announced his support for Joe Biden on June 2nd, 2020. So during the 2020 general election, some experts were surprised by the strength of Trump's support amongst Mexican Americans in areas like the Rio Grande Valley, which increased by 10% from 2016. So what do you think that is?
Makes no sense is what it is.
So others, however, noted that the increase toward Trump in 2020 represented the culmination of long-term trends within the Mexican-American Latino communities. In December 2020, Alex Padilla was appointed to replace Vice President Kamala Harris as the junior senator from California. And he was sworn in by Harris in January 2021, thus becoming the first Latino senator in the state's history. So, in the 2020s, Mexican Americans and other Latinos have joined calls for racial justice and to end the police brutality of the United States. Analysis of fatal U.S. police shootings in October 2020 showed that in the prior 5 years, Native Americans, Black Americans, and Latinos were the three ethnic groups killed by the police at the highest rates in the country, respectively. Do you agree with that, Ruby?
I do agree with that.
So activists within the community...
I don't agree that it's happening. But yeah, that data is correct.
Yep. So activists within the community, however, expressed frustration that the years leading up to the 2020-2021 United States racial unrest, police killings of Latino boys and men had largely been met with sustained national indifference. So several cases did generate national headlines. Outrage was expressed when 8th grader Andy Lopez, who was 13 years old, was shot and killed by the Sonoma County Sheriff's deputy who mistook Lopez's toy gun for a real gun, and no criminal charges were ever filed. So how do you feel about that, Ruby?
I'll say it again. It's not fair. It makes me very, very upset. This little boy, I mean, like, he was a teenager. He was barely living his life.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to just be shot down over a toy gun and then there be no, like, justice served, like, what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm. So the death of Andres Guadardo, who was 18 years old, also sparked outrage after a Los Angeles Sheriff's Department deputy... Los Angeles Sheriff's Department whistleblower claimed the officer killed Guadardo as part of an initiation. So...
What?
Yeah.
What type of initiation?
It's a rite of passage marking an entrance or acceptance into a group or society.
Right, but this was a...
Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, yeah.
Sheriff's Department?
Mm-hmm.
So they have this rite of passage where they have to go and shoot someone.
That's what this whistleblower said.
Or what?
That's what this whistleblower says.
Wow.
So nationally, over 900 Latinos were killed by the police in just the 5 years leading up to 2020. So some of these killings of young unarmed Latino men drew outrage for the sheer brutality. In the case of Sean Monterosa, who was 22, in Vallejo, California, Monterosa was apprehended on his knees with his hands held above his waist when the police opened fire and killed him.
So it sounds like these cops are exhibiting gang behavior behind a badge.
Sounds like it. So in the case of Alex Nieto, who was 28 years old, Nieto was eating his dinner of a burrito and chips before work at a San Francisco park when a passerby called 911 because he considered Nieto suspicious. So when the SF... Because he was eating a burrito and chips.
What the...
So when the SFPD arrived, one officer shot 23 rounds at Nieto. Another officer shot him 20 times. And 2 more officers shot Nieto at least 5 more times while he lay dying.
That is unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. Yet no officer...
You don't think the first 20 rounds were sufficient? You had to shoot him another, 25 times? Like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yet no officer was criminally charged.
Of course.
In April 2021, 13-year-old Adam Toledo in Chicago was chased into an alley before being shot and killed by police. So yeah, what do you think about all this police violence going on?
I think we should stop talking about it before I have to break something in my home.
So, we're going to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic.
And how that affected?
Mm-hmm. So this was disproportionately impacted the Mexican American and Latino communities. Professor Rogelio Sáenz described the pandemic's effect on Tejanos and Latinos in Texas, saying 2020 was a hellish year. Once you adjusted for age, you really see clearly that Latinos were dying at rates more than 3 times as high as the white population. In 2020 alone, approximately 1 in 1,150 Latinos in the United States died from COVID-19.
Rest in peace. That is horrible.
Because many Mexican Americans and Latinos disproportionately work in the service sector and were thus considered part of the essential workforce, they have had to bear a major part of the pandemic's force. So, complications from the coronavirus have been especially dire for Latinos without health insurance. In the economic fallout of the pandemic, many Mexican Americans and Latinos have relied on food banks and unemployment insurance to keep their families alive.
Yep, I can attest to that.
And that is it. We're now in present day. And that basically ends the entire Mexican American history up to now.
Up to now in America.
In
And we will definitely place our sources, like we always do,
well, we'll try.
in the chat, in the description. What do you mean we'll try?
Well, there's only so many characters I can fit into the YouTube description box.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, yes, we will try, but most of it, is stuff that's already out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what do you think, what is your opinion on everything that happened in the 2010s and the 2020s?
It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in for sure. Very sad, very tragic history for the Mexican Americans, for the Latino community as a whole.
So what are
some
we?
silver linings, like I said, but not enough. Not enough. There's more bad than there is good still. There's apparently a lot of work still that needs to be done. So all these grassroots organizations, you have to do what you can to support them. You have to be involved. You have to vote. You have to do all of these things if you want there to be change.
So what is your... So now that we discussed the entire history of Mexican Americans, what is your opinion on our history here?
It's been very one-sided.
Okay.
We have not had, a fair trial in anything. And people are, people in power are apparently very, very worried about us replacing them still. Even though most of our goals, are family oriented and we're just trying to make a living and survive like everybody else.
Right. So what are we gonna do next? What's the future now that we finished Mexican American history?
So we did want to go into a different culture, which is a very important, culture, I think, even more so than Mexican Americans, because the next one we wanted to do was Native Americans, and of course we all know that they were here years and years and years before any of us ever were. So that's super important. But depending on if we can get our guests to get on, with their scheduling and everything, we may have something in between where we discuss Puerto Rico.
Yeah, the Puerto Rican history.
Puerto Ricans in America or women in America. So we'll do either one of those.
Yes.
In between if we can't do the Native American one right away.
We're gonna do Puerto Rican history first, and that'll be awesome sauce. All right.
Yep.
So yeah.
Because Nate is half Puerto Rican.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So we're gonna do that, and we're also gonna do women history because Ruby is half woman. Am I right?
Okay, yeah.
Well, I mean that's technically true.
My monthly period would beg to differ.
I mean it's technically true. You did come from both a woman and a man, so technically.
Technically, I was born of a woman and a man. Yes.
Yes. So yeah. That was it. That's the history of Mexican Americans, and we hope that you learned a lot from this. Am I right, Ruby?
Yes, because that's what we want. Even though it's very, very hard for me to hear all of this, I think it's important that everybody knows it. The bad and the good.
So yeah. So reporting for the final time on Mexican American history, I've been Nathaniel Avila.
And I've been Ruby Rodriguez.
And
Painfully.
why are you painfully?
This stuff bothers me so
Okay.
much.
Do you need a hug?
No, I need justice.
I'll give you a hug. Hugs.
I need justice.
Okay. So yeah, we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Vision podcast, home of Wacky Talkies, The Kingdom, Evil Exists, and many more.